Good morning, everybody. Welcome in to a Week 15 edition of the Establish the Run First Look Show. I'm Gary Hartman, going to be taking you through a quick first look at the upcoming Sunday DraftKings main slate as we transition from Week 14 to Week 15 and really a entire new phase of the fantasy season, if you will, as most people are entering the playoffs of their season-long leagues. Best ball regular season has come to a conclusion. Good luck to all of you that are advancing to the playoffs with your best ball teams and your regular season teams. But if you are not one of those people, and if you're joining us for the first time because your regular season may be over, we're happy to have you because DFS does not sleep. That's right. 4 more regular season weeks here for daily fantasy sports. And we're going to take you through all the need to know for DraftKings. In this video, DraftKings and FanDuel for all of our ETR content throughout the week. Really absolutely crazy that we're already this far into the season. But fun stuff. And, buys are behind us, but that does not mean that the slates are getting bigger because with college football season being in the playoff, that means we get Saturday games for the NFL. So let's start there, talk about the teams that are off the slate. We have a 10-game main slate, which ties last week for the smallest of the regular season. Teams that are off Thursday night, we have the 49ers and the Seahawks. We'll see what happens with Brock Purdy and his oblique injury, but no 49ers, no Christian McCaffrey on this slate, no Seattle players on this slate. Saturday, we have 3 games. And so we'll have content throughout the week. I don't know to what extent yet. Keep an eye on all the Establish the Run socials to hear on as far as shows are concerned for the Saturday slate, but we will absolutely have projections for the Saturday slate. That's a 3-game slate similar to Thanksgiving. That's Colts, Vikings, Ravens, Browns, and Dolphins, Bills. So, some big names off that slate. Lamar Jackson's not back yet for Baltimore, but obviously, he would be off the slate. The Browns are off the slate. Vikings, Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook. Miami, the 2 Miami receivers, and obviously all the Bills stuff that we are usually talking and considering in DFS is off this slate. Sunday night, the Giants and Commanders were flexed into that game for basically a winner likely to make the playoffs, loser go home match. So no Giants Commanders. That's not as consequential for fantasy purposes. And then Monday night is the Rams and Packers. So those are all the teams off the main slate. Let's dive right into the main slate, though. As you can see on your screen, we're going to talk about this from a DraftKings perspective. So I mentioned, even though no buys, only a 10-game slate. And, once again, a theme that we've spoken a lot about this year, not that many spots that absolutely jump out at you. There is not one 50-point over-under game total right now as it stands on Tuesday morning. The closest thing is Chiefs-Texans. That's a 49.5 right now, so essentially a 50, but big spread. KC's 14-point favorite, so that's always something to consider in DFS. The next highest, also a big spread. Eagles-Bears is a 48.5, but that's a 9-point spread. We do have a 48-point spread with Cowboys-Jaguars, only a 4.5-point spread. So there are going to be some games to attack here, but there's nothing that obvious. There's a lot of 30s and low 40s and mid 40s as far as game totals are concerned. So this is not like oh my God, everyone's attacking Vikings-Lions like last week. And really what we've seen a lot of this season on these main slates, I don't know if it's that they're putting the high-scoring games in primetime spots or what it is, but we have not had that many shootout projection games, if you will. So let's dive right in, starting with quarterback. Again, we go really rapid fire here, nothing too in-depth, kind of just my first look without any projections, barely looking into the matchups, take on plays, and just kind of get our thoughts into that, area, that place we want to be as we start thinking about the next week. So quarterback, we started at the top here with Jalen Hurts, now the MVP favorite, above who was the MVP favorite for a bunch of the past coming weeks, Patrick Mahomes. So those are your top 2. Spence on the slate. Hurts goes into Chicago, gets a Bears team who is not very good defensively. This is a guy that is completely matchup proof, went into a bad weather, cold situation game in division against the Giants this past week and absolutely dominated. Almost 30.5 DraftKings points. Team put up 48 points. Two touchdowns through the air, added another one on the ground, had his 70 yards on the ground. The guy is absolutely matchup proof with an incredibly high floor with a ceiling to go with it. So I have no problem going into Hurts Hurts singles, Hurts doubles, A couple Bears bring back options if you want to go that route, but you don't even really have to go that route. Again, I mentioned this is the second highest total at 48.5. I don't have implied team totals right in front of me, but I'm sure the Eagles are right up there as the highest of the week. Right underneath that, you got Mahomes going into Houston. Houston's been okay against the pass, and obviously you saw how competitive they were against Dallas this past week, almost getting away with that game. That said, I'm not going away from Mahomes here. And if we get another spot where, like last week at 8,000 going into Denver, that he was going to come through with very little ownership, wouldn't be surprised to see that again. I would be very interested. Again, I mentioned 14-point spread. Those are kind of the times I like to attack Mahomes, when because of the big spread, everyone's going off it because they think they can't be pushed. And then he, falls through the cracks. Excuse me. Been battling something for about a week now. Almost better, but definitely still battling something a little bit here. Okay, sorry. Mahomes. So, yeah, I think these types of situations where they're big favorites in a game where they should roll, people go away from them. But my mindset on these is, if Mahomes is to win by 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, they likely did that through the air. So I have no problem coming into Mahomes at lower ownership, especially because there's not that many quarterbacks that just jump off the page this week. Fields on the other side of the Hurts matchup is a really tough sell. I love Justin Fields. I love what's going on with him in his legs. I know this is a home matchup. Could be a little trappy for the Eagles. Not a game that they really need coming off that big division win. And if that's the case, yeah, in MME sets in large field, I don't mind sprinkling in a little bit of Fields, but it's hard for me to consider, if I'm playing a quarterback in this game, that I wouldn't want it to be Jalen Hurts. The Eagles defense is really good, and he's still very expensive. So it's just a hard sell for me on Fields. Herbert, on the other hand, I'm sure will be popular, but this is like the spot that you want. Everyone's calling it what it is, and the Titans, that they are a pass funnel. They have been all season. Saw it again this past week with Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence was the optimal quarterback. Saw it, Zay Jones get a lot of love. Evan Ingram obviously had the biggest game of his career. Where was that on the Giants, Evan Ingram? But I digress. Herbert, he's throwing the ball an obscene amount of times, 47, 51. And Tennessee is a team that should be able to push. And even if they can't, this game would be close because Brandon Staley can't help himself but make the Chargers underachieve and keep these games close. So I think this is a week we finally get over that 30-point Justin Herbert hump that we have not seen this year. I love Herbert this week. Absolutely love him. I'm going to attack the Tennessee pass funnel. So under that, you got Burrow. Tougher spot going into Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay coming off the worst loss of their season in San Francisco. Tampa Bay does have a pass rush. Their defense still isn't bad. I do think Tampa Bay is bad in general, but this doesn't seem like the optimal Burrow spot. That said, I don't eliminate, especially on a week where a quarterback, there aren't like the surefire absolute quarterback plays. These aren't the type of plays that I would eliminate from my player pool altogether. Burrow doubles, we could consider them still here for sure. Kyler is not going to play. It looks like he's out for the season. We'll talk about McCoy, I guess, in a minute. Dak, though, really like this Dak spot going into Jacksonville. I mentioned only 40.5-point spread, 48-point game total. 39 times through the ball, did not get there at all. We haven't seen a Dak ceiling game in a long time. Meanwhile, the Cowboys have been playing really well. I think this could easily be a week. We could really squeeze in Dak doubles. There's plenty of bringbacks on the other side. Only 6,200 has gone down. He's priced really low, and I get it with the output, but we know the ceiling's still in there with Dak, so I really like Dak. You compare him with Pollard as well. You compare him with running backs. Like, it's a solid spot. Trevor Lawrence, I'm not as into. I know we've seen 2 of the last 3 weeks of being viable, if not optimal. But now this is a tough spot going into not going to Dallas. So bringing to Dallas, hosting Dallas at home. Dallas is a really good pass rush still. There's some guys underneath him that I prefer a little bit more, but I don't know. I think I wouldn't rule it out. He's playing great football, starting to live up to that first overall pick billing, the next Andrew Luck as it were. Certainly looking the part in the second half of his sophomore season. So I wouldn't completely rule it out, but I would rather the Dak side, I think, on that front. Not a Goff week for me going into the Meadowlands facing a good Jets defense. Derek Carr gets a tougher matchup with New England. He's never a tournament player for me. The ceiling's not there. Tom Brady, I think you could sprinkle him into tournaments. We have not seen too many of those games that we saw last year were obviously he's not a threat with his legs, but we did see in week 4, these types of game, 385 and 3 through the air. Cincinnati's defense has been good though, and I'm a little worried about his ability to get that 30-point game. If Mike White goes, he's absolutely in play. Detroit's an excellent matchup. He's still only 5,400. They're at home. We know that they're comfortable with Mike White really operating this offense from a pass-first perspective. we'll see. He's day to day. I hope he plays because I would love to play him at this 5,400 mid tier. I think it'd be a great play this week. After that, I'm not going into Tannehill on the other side of this. I know that you got a big price discrepancy between him and Herbert, but I'd still rather just get up to Herbert in that game. Dalton is one of the guys that like has to be the pitch perfect spot for me to want to go there, and this could maybe be it at home against Atlanta. I think at 5,200, I don't think it's totally out of play here. I don't mind going to Andy Dalton remaining the starter. I don't love it. I think there's a really low floor there for you as well. I wouldn't go to Desmond Ridder in his first start. We already know how much the Falcons were comfortable running the ball throughout this entire season with Mariota. I highly doubt you bring a rookie in and you're going to change the tune there. So hopefully it's a good thing for Drake London and the pass game, but I wouldn't be using Desmond Ridder and DFS in his first week here. After that, again, if Flacco starts, I think you can consider it because of the matchup. So see what happens with the Jets there. The Steelers quarterback, I'm probably avoiding even there at 5K. And then McCoy, probably going to start for the rest of the year. I think he's serviceable, but not in this spot, not going into Denver. Speaking of Denver, if Russ misses, Brett Rippon is only 5K, gets a good matchup at home against Arizona. Arizona's on the short week. But I just don't know if there's a ceiling there. If there is, we could talk about it. It could be a very, very deep punt if you're really trying to look to save money at quarterback in week 15. So there you go. Quarterback's really a hodgepodge. You could really make an argument for a couple guys in the up tier, a lot of guys in the mid tier, and then some guys in the 5Ks. But similar to last week, I think my pool is going to be a little bit bigger than it normally is because there isn't those standout quarterback plays that I like to see on my main slates. All right, going over to running back. Austin Eckler, floor is just so freaking high. We saw it again. 45 yards on the ground. Okay, not efficient. 3 yards of carry. Doesn't matter. Got in the end zone. Cool. What else? 8 for 8 targets through the air and another 60 yards. That just gives him such a high floor. Christian McCaffrey, prime-esque floor. And now in this spot is going to be a spot we're going to be attacking a lot. And yes, Tennessee does have a good run defense. They have a very bad pass defense. But where does Eckler get it done, guys? The pass game. So I am fine with Eckler at 8,500. I hope that he falls through the cracks a little bit. I don't know if he will, but I love pairing him with Herbert. So much so that I would consider Eckler in almost all my Herbert lineups. I know you don't have to do that. Obviously, Keenan and Mike Williams would be great plays, but I think it's something you can consider. Josh Jacobs, tough matchup against New England. Very good against the ground, but the role is so elite. The price is high enough that because of the tough matchup, the injury tag and the price, maybe he falls through the cracks a little bit and is a good tournament play. So something to consider. Derrick Henry. Really like the spot for Derrick Henry because the Chargers have been bad against the run for years. Now, it's not necessarily the cold weather end of season Derrick Henry spot that I love to attack because it's in LA, but it's still the end of the season Derrick Henry. It's a really good matchup. We saw, a return to Derrick Henry last week like we thought we would, 25 points, 120 yards, 7 yards to carry. They had to abandon the run a little bit in the second half. Could have been a much bigger day, but he has been way more involved in the pass game this year. Another 5 targets, 3 for 34 through the air. I really like Derrick Henry at 8K this week. I'm sure he'll be owned, but I think he's a good play. Mixon gets a Tampa defense that has had the reputation of being a really good run defense for years. They're still pretty good as far as between the tackles, run defense, but I do think that they can be beat out of the backfield in other ways, like we saw to Christian McCaffrey this past week. We know Mixon is a capable pass catcher. We know that the Bengals want to really have a balanced offensive attack using Mixon a lot. I don't mind Mixon at all, even in the tougher matchup against Tampa Bay. Pollard and Zeke, absolutely sign me up once again. They have the great matchup against Houston last week. They had another very strong matchup against Jacksonville here again. Pollard once again got there on less work than Zeke, 10 for 42 on the ground and a touchdown, 4 catches through the air. You look at Elliott, you get a full almost $1,000 discount, $900 less, 15 carries he had. Did find the end zone. Also a little work in the pass game. Want plenty of both of those guys for sure. It's going to be a wait and see on Ramondre. Had to leave the game multiple times last night. Eventually got ruled out. Obviously, we know the workload is elite when he goes. Let's see what happens because Damian Harris might not be ready. We'll see. Kevin Harris got in the end zone. Pierre Strong played really well. There could be a value option here on New England. We'll wait and see there. James Conner, the role remains really, really good. I don't think much changes as far as Kyler coming out and Colt McCoy coming in. The only thing that might change is when Kyler's in, the same way when you have a running threat in a quarterback could open up some run lanes for your back, but it doesn't really matter because the role is so good. The matchup isn't the best though with Denver. It's fine. I would consider him for sure. Not the best. Kamara just hasn't been great, and it's really hard for me to want to go there. Just not being used the way we want. There's something up there. I don't know if this is his last year in New Orleans. He's lost favor with the staff. Obviously had the off the field stuff that's kind of put a cloud over his whole season, but Mark Ingram got hurt last week, and I don't think Ingram's playing. I think Ingram's out for a while. That just might be forced to use Kamara in the way that we know that they can use Kamara. We have seen the ceiling this year. We had a 27-point game in week 5. That was pretty much it. He's been incredibly inefficient on the ground. The Saints team is not the same. He hasn't had over 3.5 yards a carry since week 7. In fact, he's been exactly around 3.3 to 3.5 yards per carry for most of the second half of the season. And then the last couple weeks has been even under that. But if we get that pass game roll back and a little bit more efficiency on the ground, the matchup is pretty good. I don't mind it as a GPP play because of the Ingram injury. Miles Sanders had a 30-burger this past week in a good matchup against the Giants. Gets another solid spot here against the Bears. Can control the game on the ground for sure. Love Miles Sanders once again this week. Montgomery's fine, but as a bring back or whatever, but probably paying from behind here against the Eagles, so I don't love that spot. ETN, I don't mind him as a bring back for sure in Dallas stuff. Not the best matchup, but could be used through the air. I think he'll fall through the cracks a little bit. His price is all the way down to $6K after getting up into the 7. So he's a cheap home option against Dallas. Don't hate it. All right, the KC guys, absolutely love them. We're going to love any running back against Houston, right? So you got Isaiah Pacheco, who's getting most of the base down work at 5,900. Also, a little bit work through the air. 3 targets this past week, 23 yards. However, it's Jerick McKinnon that I'm still the most interested in here. And I was one of the few people that really played a lot of Jerick McKinnon in DFS last week, really saved my week. 7 for 112 through the air, 2 touchdowns. Also getting some work on the ground. Got some red zone work, did get some carries. They trusted him to close out the game last week. So I think this coaching staff is really trusting Jerick McKinnon right now. So much so that I wouldn't even be surprised if they hadn't been using, even when CEH was healthy, if they hadn't been using McKinnon so much to save him for the end of the season. We remember last year in the best ball playoffs and the fantasy playoffs, it was McKinnon. That was the guy that was kind of the engine of their backfield. And, this is a veteran that's had a lot of injury history. I think they've been saving him for the end of the year. I like Pacheco. I like McKinnon. I love both of them. Like McKinnon a lot in my home stuff, but both these guys, really good matchup. I will be playing both in spades. Really think they're both really good. Going down from there, it's hard to trust Cordell Patterson in that split backfield right now with Ritter coming in. I'm not very interested. Dameon Pierce looks like he's going to miss a while with a high ankle sprain, at least a couple weeks. So could be some value at Houston. KC's defense is not good. So we'll see who starts there. In the Houston backfield. They just released Eno Benjamin. So you got Rex Burkhead, who could get some base work for sure. Definitely get some pass down work. And then Dario Gumbawale, I would imagine, is going to step into a bigger role. It'll be interesting to see what they end up doing here. Weird time to release Eno Benjamin after the injury for Dameon Pierce, but there'll be some value on Houston. After Dameon Pierce, there are some other options here. You got Najee against Carolina. I think that's fine. You got the Jets guys. If Lions guys, if you want to use them as bring back, particularly Swift against the Jets, I think that's okay. Fournette and Rachaad White. The problem is I think they're just directly leading to each other's ceilings at this point. Cincinnati's not the best matchup. I'm not that interested. And then I think Zonovan Knight, though, is definitely in play. Underpriced at 5,300, 17 carries again last week. Maybe in control of this game. Does get a little bit of work through the air. I don't love the committee here, but I think he's underpriced, and I think he'd be in play. I think that pretty much does it. We mentioned McKinnon. Keep an eye on the Houston stuff. Keep an eye on the New England stuff. Could be some value out of those guys. All right, over to receiver. Devontae, not the best matchup here against New England, but, he's been an every other week guy when he does poorly, right? 14 points followed by a 40-point game. 10-point game at home here. Wouldn't be surprised to see him do really well. Hopkins last night still got a 7 for 79 and 11 targets. Could have had a bigger night. I wouldn't be surprised if Devontae does well, and then also falls through the cracks because he's so expensive. Jamar is fine. Tampa Bay has just been bad in general. Don't love this spot overall, but he's Jamar Chase, one of the top 5 receivers in the league. Really good play. I don't mind it at all. AJ Brown, I like him in correlation more than anything else this week. I think you really need the Browns to push a little bit, mixed with, if he's hitting, I think Hurts is hitting a lot of that time because of the upside of these AJ Brown games at 8K. So I like him, but I like him better in correlation. Amon-Ra finally gets his first, quote unquote, bad spot in a while after getting spots at Minnesota, Jacksonville, Buffalo. Going into the Jets have really good corners. They've done a good job shutting down receivers. I think he falls through the cracks a little bit because of it. And also, he's not going to just be one-on-one lined up with Sauce because he plays in the slot a lot. So I think there's ways they could really compile his way to volume. Also, as a bring back, Lions offense. This game might get a little sneaky if the weather's good in the Jet. If Mike White plays, the weather's good in East Rutherford. I could see this game going back and forth a little bit more than maybe it projects for right now. So I don't mind Amon-Ra still. Hopkins, tougher matchup against Denver in Denver with Surtain and all that. But, the role is so good. And I think McCoy actually coming in is probably good for him. CD gets Jacksonville. I think that's fine. I like him in Dak stuff. Obviously sign me all the way up for the Chargers receivers this week. We mentioned the Tennessee pass funnel. I want all different types of Chargers doubles this week. I love Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen's back, baby. Keenan Allen is back. 14 targets in each of the last 2 weeks. Could have had a much bigger game this past week. Was 8 yards away from the bonus. Didn't find the end zone. 12 catches for 92 yards, though. That's the full point PPR Keenan Allen that we like. Absolutely love Keenan Allen. Chris Godwin against Tampa Bay, against Cincinnati. The targets are still there. The 8-out stuff's low, though. It's middle of the field. It's kind of low upside stuff, but he's in play. He's a tournament option. I like Christian Kirk better, though, right underneath him. Like him as a bring back in Dallas stuff a lot. Failed this week in a matchup where all of his peers did well in Zay Jones and Evan Ingram. I was all over Christian Kirk because I love the matchup against Tennessee, and I thought ownership-wise he was falling through the cracks. And it turned out our projections were right. I mean, he just didn't get it done. But I really like Christian Kirk. Still the number one receiver there. The target share is still very, very strong. I like Christian Kirk as a bring back in Dallas stacks or as a one-off play. I think it's okay as well. Olave, also a really good play because you get the Atlanta matchup at home in a good spot here for sure. So this 6K tier is really interesting. Devontae, I also, again, like in Eagles stuff. Mike Will, though, for sure, looked good. 6 for 116 and a touchdown through the air. We're going to be attacking this game big time. Certainly like him. It's just impossible to go to Mike Evans right now. I mean, the guy couldn't have worse luck if he tried. I mean, he's had a Hall of Fame career pretty much, but it's not the year for Mike Evans. Judy looked really, really good as being the alpha in this offense with no Sutton. 3 touchdowns, 33 points. A lot of this just depends on what happens. Brett Rippon found him for one of those touchdowns as well. I do like this spot a lot at home against Arizona. So I think this Denver spot could be pretty sneaky. Let's see. I think if Russ plays, I actually think, maybe this offense turned a corner. I know the Chiefs defense is really bad, but so is Arizona's. So maybe they turned a corner enough at least where you could say, hey, this past game is respectable enough where we can go to it. I'm a little worried if Russ doesn't play, though. Garrett Wilson, your cover boy of the video. Role remained amazing in a tougher matchup on the road in Buffalo in bad weather. Still got 6 for 78 on 7 targets through the air. And haven't really raised his price enough. He should be a mid-6 to high-6 player as a wide receiver 1 in this offense. I'm hoping Mike White plays, but it doesn't really make a difference if Flacco goes. If Wilson goes, I'm a little bit more concerned, but I would expect it to be Flacco. At 6K against the Lions, yeah, he's going to be a cash game play for sure. And I think he'll get a lot of ownership, but, had to shout him out. Juju is now under 6K. He has been for a couple of weeks, but, role was really good last week. 9 for 74, 11 targets and a touchdown. I like his role in this offense right now. I think you can put Josh Palmer in tournament pools. One-Eyed Jack mentioned Hollywood Brown, only 5,500. I think that's an interesting tournament play for sure. DJ Moore hurt his ankle in this past game. If he plays, I think you could still consider him, but really busted hard last week. We'll see what happens with Sutton. Excuse me. I would expect him to miss one more game here with the hammy. If he does, plenty of Judy available to you. Kendall Hinton will be a value option again as well. I think both Steelers guys will be in play against Carolina in a pretty good matchup here. Let's see who starts a quarterback there, Pickett or Trubisky. But both guys will be tournament options. And then you get under the 5K guys, tune in to cheap wide receiver volume article on establishtheRun.com. Tight end. It's Kelsey and then a huge 3K drop-off. Kelsey is due at this point. We are now 3 straight weeks of pedestrian work for Travis Kelsey. Has not looked the best in my eye test. He's had the targets. He's dropped some balls, kind of like alligator arming some stuff. I don't love what I've seen out of Travis Kelsey. Only catching 4 balls of each of the last 3 weeks, only about half his targets each week. Not loving that. But he's due in a matchup here that I'm going to be attacking, I think, more than the field. So if you can afford it, I don't mind it. And then you get, after Kelsey, you go all the way down to the 4K guys. So it's just like, take your pick here. I think just important, what I would note here on the tight end stuff, correlate. We mentioned getting a lot of, quarterbacks in your pool this year. Yeah, he could be, when Jack mentioned he's maybe wearing down Kelsey, like age model's a thing there. I still believe in it. I think he'll be fine, but I think it's just a little blip on his seasonal radar. Anyway, correlate your tight ends because you're going to be using a lot of quarterbacks in your pools. For example, I want to increase Schultz projection in Dak lineups. I definitely like him as the second piece of a double for Dak. Everett, same thing. We just saw what Evan Ingram did to this defense last week. Excellent matchup, and you're going to be using a lot of Herbert, so doubles there for him. Ingram, same thing again. If you want to bring him as a bring back, Dolchich gets a great matchup. Arizona stinks against tight ends, and even if it's Rippin or if it's Russ, I think Dolchich will be in play, and I'm sure he'll get some ownership. 3,600. Jawan also in play if he plays against the Falcons at home. Hunter Henry against the Raiders is a good play. So Conklin, I'll correlate Mike White stuff. Shig on the other side of the Charger stuff got there last week. I love this kid. Go Terps. Really strong, athletic player, is going to be a really hot name going into next season for sure. And you got all these punts, and you can just kind of go. You can roll with them. Tight ends really, really thin this week, though. So I think taking your shots, correlating your punt plays is the way to go. All right, that'll just about do it here for your Week 15 main slate first look. I mentioned we'll have other stuff going for you throughout this week. Who do you like going here down the home stretch? Please give this video a like, a subscribe button for the ETR YouTube page. Write in the comments who you're into this week. I think it's a fascinating week on the 10-game main slate with, I think a lot more eyes coming to DFS. There might be some more casuals in the streets these days. Let's take advantage because of the season-long being over. If you are in the season-long playoffs, good luck. If you're in the best ball playoffs, good luck. But let's continue crushing DFS. Let's finish the season strong. We're in the home stretch here. Crazy to believe, but I'll be back with you next week for another first look. Check out everything we have on the Established to Run podcast feed later today. Adam Levitan solo pod, team by team pods coming out. We'll have all the good stuff on establishedtherun.com throughout the week. I wish you all the best of luck in Week 15. Take care, everybody.